So it just kept moving on from there. Now, what I'm trying to get at is, when did you stop working at the music store and start playing the bass for a living?
Well, the bass was always for a living, but there wasn't always work to make the living. So the bass would go to the hock shop, or we would call it the vault.
Oh man!
Or else I'd have to sell my instrument.
I've been there too.
So we'd do that, and then when credit cards came in, I'd charge the credit card, and then I'd get a gig, and then I could pay it off, and then just whatever we had to do, and then we'd get creative and do other things.
Okay, yeah.
And then one of the breaks were in the neighborhood I lived in. I used to live, in the Ingleside district, Lakeview in San Francisco, and on Urbano Drive in San Francisco, like about a mile and a half, 2 miles from our house, Sly had bought a house for his family on Urbano Drive, and I had a Huffy, little like, not a Stingray, the cheap Huffy instead of the Schwinn Stingray. We'd ride our bicycles down there. They'd finish practicing, they come out, throw a frisbee, and then they'll let their dogs out. We jump on the bikes. And so Sly was in the neighborhood, and his cousins, Tommy and Junebug, would drive around Sly's Mercedes limousine, and they used to keep Gun in the back, and Gun was the pit bull on the back of Riot Going On record, and they would drive around the neighborhood with Gun and all that. And I guess after small talk, they needed a bass player, and so Junebug and Tommy said, "Oh yeah, well Vega plays," and Sly goes, "Who's Vega?" And he says, "Oh yeah, it's a white boy over there, and he plays with a pick. He plays 16th notes." And he said, "Bring him." And that's how I recorded a record called "I Get High on You" with Sly.
That's awesome, man. You ever tour with him?
No, I didn't. That's where I really learned how to overdub. Like at that time, I wasn't there for all the Sly stuff. I don't know all the bands. I know people in the bands, but that record was put together. Well, "A High on You" was like a live track, but Sly really took existing tracks and overdubbed, and created and kept on layering stuff, and then he put out that record, "I Get High on You."
That's awesome, man. I know it's hard to toot your own horn, but you're not doing it for yourself. You're doing it for us bass players who like to follow Bobby Vega and see your body of work. Right. So just give me I know, but again, it's not for you, it's for us. So
if you can answer the question,
if you could just give us a discography so we can go look, we can go listen, and all of that kind of stuff, because you played it. I mean, you play very well, and I just want to go back and get a history lesson, man.
Well, what happened? When I was fortunate and lucky, I was in the Bay Area, and at that time, there were studio musicians, and then there was tours. And back then-ish, the studio musicians didn't go on the road. And there were name acts, or name bands, or name artists would do an album, and then they'd have to go on the road. And I was lucky enough to be able to pick up road gigs. So I didn't play on a lot. I played on some recordings, and I learned my trade or my art on the road with people who actually, to me, I call it, this is a crew like built the railroad, was down being one of those people that were traveling on the road. And I got to play with people I used to be able, I'd buy their record sometimes, the next thing you know, I have an audition. That is like, couldn't make it up, it was like a dream. Right? Or else, buy the record, or else, you go on tour with them, but it was on after they already had made it.
Okay, throw some names out there.
Well, to me, I learned a lot playing with Etta James, and I worked with Etta James from about 83 to 90, and then off and on I did her last tour that she ever played.
Awesome.
And I learned, in all honesty, how to fuse rock and blues and just soul music of a company, and somebody that's that great with a big voice that can actually like knock a building down and then turn around and make you cry with all the different dynamics. And I learned how to play in a big band configuration with it, and that taught me a lot.
Did you read charts, or you?
No.
Are you a reader?
I don't know how to read music at all.
Wow.
I play all by ear.
That's awesome.
And And that was the kind of thing where, you know, you'd get a cassette or the artist would send you an album or you'd have to go buy the record. And then back then it was such an odd thing where, like, if you learned it, like say somebody sent you a cassette, if your cassette deck was out of time, it was in a different key. And I didn't know how to transpose, and I was going, oh, and I'd have to, you know, I'd get all nervous. I mean,
yeah,
I wouldn't recommend doing how I've done it, because really learning how to read and the fundamentals in that, and it's a communication skill, it'll save you a lot of heartache and brain stuff and time and everybody else time, and it's a way to communicate with people. I really do recommend to be able to get, if you can't get all the food groups at the same time, it's hard, but to be able to play by ear and listen, and then get the piano so you have the high end and the low end, and learn how to read treble and bass clef, and learn how to read charts down. It'll be an easier road, and it'll be more enjoyment, and you'll be able to have more opportunities open for you.
Right, that's awesome advice. And you know, but the funny thing you mentioned is when you do learn how to read, say that song is in the key of F, and I'm guessing 50% of the time somebody's going to change the key. Now it's going to be hard to transpose at that point, right?
Well, it can be, and then you have to get your mind open enough to be able to do that. Right, and it's usually it's a person thing. It's not a man or a woman, but people sing in different keys, and as time goes on, the keys do change.
Right, and
that's why when you hear a song, when I hear a song, you know, I get used to hearing whatever key it is, and then you play it in another key, and the song doesn't sound the same to me.
That's right.
But that's not my choice, because my job as a bass player, what I learned how to do is accompany somebody when they're telling a story, so they can tell their story. Block, and then expand, and then bang, take it down, spread it out again, they tell their story. And so I've learned now as a bass player, my job is to make everybody sound together like they're playing together, even though they might not be. I'm not going to say anything bad about anybody. But, you know,
you just did.
Well, if the guitar player isn't playing with the keyboard player, and the keyboard player isn't playing with the drummer, it's up to us to make them sound like they're all playing together.
You hear that, bass players?
That's right.
Because it's about, I don't want to use the G word as groove, but it's feel, and to get it so everybody's sounding like a whole. You know, that's what we do.
Right.
You know,
sometimes you got to sacrifice, man. Sometimes you got to play the wrong note so everybody sounds like a team. Like they all work.
Your feel are your thoughts.
Right. They call that chemistry.
Yeah. Well, and to me, the chemistry of it is you know, it's like having family. It's a relationship, because then even if there's somebody that can't play as good as this other person or that person, you guys get together and it's a sound. And whether it's wrong or right, that's how that group of people sound together, and you get used to that, and you have your own individual sound. And that's what I think a lot of bands don't have anymore, because everybody's getting together fast without working on, you know, practicing, preparing the meal.
Before we go any further, I wanted to know if anybody else has some questions before I get started on my serious questions. Donald?
Actually, he already answered the question, because I was going to ask him how was he muting, and he had the actual pick in his hand, and I didn't think he had it. So the question was already answered.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different ways. When I first started playing with a pick, it was because people were playing with their thumb. There was a thumb rest here on the whole side.
Oh, yeah.
And they didn't come up on top. At first, they came on the bottom. And what you would do is you would put your hand this way, so your hand would stay stiff, so you'd put upward pressure this way.
Wow.
So you would go. Right. And so I took that off because I couldn't go this way.
Yeah, I always wondered what they put that there.
Yeah, it was that, right? And then later on they put them up here so you can rest your hand up
Sure
here.
did. Yeah.
Right. But before all that, and then they had
what's called the ashtray.
And I used to have one on my wall that used to catch bottle tops. They never caught them good because it was too close to the wall. I hit it and they go playing. I go, oh, and I pick it up and I put it in.
What kind of bass is that you got right there?
This is a Fender Jazz bass. It's a 1966. It's been refinished. It's a long story, but it's made it through a bunch of different things. I got it probably in 75 or something. You know, back when there were.
So you've had it for 30.
Nothing was cheap because it was still a lot of money back then.
Wait, you've had that bass for 40 years?
Yes.
39.
I don't know. Do the math.
39 years.
Calculate.
If you got it at 75,
Yeah, 76, 75.
and you've held on it, did it do any prison time in the pawn shop? Did this particular bass?
It's been to the vault.
Once I send mine to the pawn shop prison, they get a life sentence, man.
Well, you know, and then the other thing too is like when you're doing all right, you had to go away.
Yeah.
You take 4 or 5 of them things to the vault, and you know that they were going to be there when you got back because it was 6 months.
Right,
So
right.
that was
Yeah.
cheap, like insurance.
Yeah.
Ish.
Yeah.
Until all of a sudden they start putting that V word on them, Vinge, and everybody started pick their part. They used to come back and go, wait a second, what happened?
When they finally learned out that when Fender started getting its reputation, things changed in the back of those rooms, man.
A lot of different. But anyway. Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry to go in
Me
that
too.
direction.
See what happened? Where you
Anybody else have any questions for this fine bassist?
I have one. So when did you decide or gravitate toward the jazz bass? And is that passive?
Yes, this one is passive. This has the. These are the new EMG. They're making passive pickups now.
Okay.
So we're making passive, and they have it's an Alnico 5 in the front and an Alnico 2 in the back.
Mm.
And these are passive. There's no battery on this one.
Okay. You finish answering that?
I think. Oh, what?
Well, how did when did you gravitate toward the jazz bass?
Oh, the gravel. Yes, thank you. See, it's like, oh no, where am I? What happened is a long time ago, after I got my Norma bass, Sherman and Clay had it going out of business sale for instruments.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to the Fillmore and I saw Mountain. You ever heard of Mountain?
Yeah.
Felix Papperlato was playing the 81. Pop, pop, Mississippi Queen. I was like, ah. Well, guess what? There was 2 basses left. There was a Paisley Fender Telecaster bass and a Gibson EB1. And I bought the EB1 because I saw Felix Papperlato play with Mountain, and that thing was huge. Well, it was a great bass. It was a great this. And I got my first soul band, the Quick Grit Soul Band, and they fired me because I wasn't funky.
Mm-hmm.
And they couldn't hear a note of it. And so I went to Downwards Music City, and I traded that EB1 for a jazz bass because I saw Larry Graham, right, with Graham Central Station. I went, that's it, right, going on all these different things, right. And I bought it, and I traded that for a jazz bass.
Wow.
And after that, I was playing, and people go, man, you can play, you're funky. And I went, and after that, it's been jazz basses. Yes.
So the other bass is at jazz as well? The other bass you have here today?
No, that's a P bass, Fender P.
But I meant a Fender. That's what I meant to say, Fender.
And that's a different kind of. The Fender P bass to me is like meat and potatoes right down the center. You hit that note and it's like bang. A jazz bass is like, to me, is highs and lows.
More
mid kind
variety.
of scoop.
Yeah.
But I always put the mid into it back anyway because I don't like it to sound like bang, bang, bang. And then boom, boom, boom.
Right.
I like to have the ish.
Okay.
Okay.
Those are EMG pickups. Now, why EMG pickups on your bass there?
Well, the first set of EMGs I actually got, I think, was in 1970, early 70s. And actually, this bass has had EMGs ever since I got it. Because when I bought it at Leo's Music, it was refinished, and it was like, headstock was white, and it had some other pickups, and they took them out, they put EMGs in it. So this bass has had EMGs, and that's how I met, actually, Rob Turner, the owner of the company.
The owner of the company?
Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome.
And I met him, and now I've been fortunate enough to be working with EMG for the last 5 years. And I have quite a collection of passive instruments and other basses, and I've always had one bass in my toolbox, or as you call it, or your arsenal, whatever you want to call it, with a set of EMGs, because it's a the active one, Alex Al, right?
Another Detroit bass player.
Killing bass player. It's like, make the hair on my arm stand up. Victor Bailey, when he was playing, right, he had the Penza Shure, and that was an EMG set. I hear that Richard Bona had a jazz bass, so it's always been like a classic sound with an EMG set of pickups and a jazz bass. And now, through all the different times, he's come up, with the actual passives. So no battery, and that's going to be the new thing. So we, listened to a bunch of different pickups. I showed him different things, and this is what he came up with.
Well, can we just hear a little bit of it?
All right. Well, here's both of them. What do you hear? A thumb pick?
Whatever you want us to hear.
Well, here's. That's both pickups, right? Here's the front pickup. Right. And then here's the back pickup.
Okay. Folks, that ain't the pickups that's making it sound that good. That's the bass player.